All right, guys. Hey, it's Tim Janik here again. Like I said last week, we talked about a little bit about leg length inequality and how, when we do Posturology 101, how we determine how to check for leg length inequality, which is, generally 90% of the population have an issue with leg length inequality, and usually about 60% of that 90% have some sort of issue like low back, neck pain, headache, whatever. Okay. However, one of the things that's really great about posturology, when we do the assessment, we're looking for leg length inequality and all those things. We also not only check for the differences in the two bones, like between the femur and the tibia, and compare it to the other side, but we also look further down at what's going on with the arches. And that's one of the things I wanted to talk about real quick today. Sometimes if there is a fallen arch on one side and the other side there's not a fallen arch, that will make it look like there is a leg length inequality, okay? And that's why in posturology, we actually go over very detailed on how to figure out, how to, find out if there is a leg length inequality and how to determine that, by taking standing measurements and then supine measurements, okay? So when we check this, we actually have a few assessments that we do that are pretty quick to determine if they have a fallen arch or not. And you can actually see here, right here, that's one of the ways that we indicate that a person has a fallen arch. Another way is by putting, a little mark in like that. And one of the things that you'll see sometimes with people with a fallen arch is you'll see that that knee will start to collapse inward like that. And then what will happen is it'll drop that hip down. The other thing that will happen is a rotation will happen. And one of the ways that we mark that is by putting a dot on the side that's anterior, okay? So what ends up happening is if the camera could actually come more in this direction right here, over here, come closer, 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 and then point downward like that. Okay, what'll happen is when that arch collapses in, you can see how my knee collapses in, and then it'll send my hip forward, okay? And if we were to assume that that was a short leg, and we missed the fallen arch there, then we'd be putting somebody in a lift and, that's going to mess everything up, okay? So one of the things that, like I said, we'll check for a fallen arch, find out if that's the problem or not, and then correct it by, sending somebody to go get an arch support, or, we actually use a place here in Houston, Village Shoe Shop, which does a great job on, with building orthotics for our clients. So a couple of things, when you're looking for an arch, okay, one of the assessments that we do is a squat test, okay, where a person may be standing like this, and then they squat, all right? We'll drop a plumb line right down from the knee, okay, and that plumb line is right center with the knee. That's one of the assessments. And one of the things that we'll see is if their arch is falling like that, and they do a squat test, bam, their knee's gonna go right in towards the middle. All right, and that's a positive sign for a squat test, okay, for a fallen arch. The other thing is we'll take a business card, okay, you can use any business card with a straight edge like that, and we'll stick it right up, flat up against the ground, and then put it right up close to that lateral malleolus. And you can see on my right side how I have a bit of a space there, okay. We go over here to the left side, do the same thing, and I actually have less space on that side. So again, that's saying that my right arch is more fallen in, and back in high school I sprained an ankle real bad. So that's something that I'm constantly working on, okay? Another test that we do, this one's always really cool to do, and you can try this out with your clients, okay? If they have a fallen arch, you have them set up, and you'll stand out here next to them, okay? So imagine if there's a therapist standing next to me. And what you would do is you have them create an arch in their feet, okay, by simply just arching up their arch. And then what you do is you let that arch collapse, and then you would see if they move forward, okay? That would also be another sign of a positive test for a collapsed arch that's causing postural problems. Okay, so like I said, in posturology, we go over all those tests and how to do them, and what you'll take from those tests and how it applies to what's going on here with the chart, okay? So, like I said, with that fallen arch, usually what you'll see is that hip that's low on the fallen arch side will be anterior, okay, rotating anterior, and then that could translate all the way up. So if we take these measurements, we transpose them here, that sacrum is also going to tilt, just like if there was a short leg, but this time what we have is an arch that's fallen. And then that spine is going to start curving up in this direction. We can kind of, you know, let's just say he's low inferior on the left, and then he decides to correct in that same direction, okay? And we can actually take this line and just kind of assume what the spine's doing there, okay? That he's got a C curve going on. All right, so these are all things that we show you how to do, how to check out in the Posturology 101 class, which is a 2.5-day class, 19-hour class that goes very, very in detail on how to take these measurements and where to find these measurements on the body, so that way you can like start creating a roadmap and a guideline for helping your clients get better and go after the source of the problem as opposed to the symptom. Because somebody like this might come in, they say they have low back pain, and you're doing all this wonderful work on the low back, but they're still not getting better because that arch is falling, dropping their hip down. So guys, I'll post another video next week. Next week we're going to talk a little bit more about the hips. Okay, basically 3 areas where distortions can start. One's in the foot, another one's in the hip, the other one's in the upper, in the cranium, and then upper cervical. So check out the class Posturology 1 happening February 20th through the 22nd, and we'll talk to you guys later. All right.